There are stories that rush at you with noise and spectacle. And then there are those that whisper. Stories that arrive not on a stage or in the chaos of headlines, but in silence inside small corners of the world, where only a few are watching. The parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Glenview, Illinois, is one such corner. From the outside, it looks like countless other churches that dot suburban America. Brick walls, a sloping roof, a cross lifted gently above the trees. People pass by on their morning commutes, children cross the sidewalks on their way to school, and neighbors mow their lawns without thinking twice. But inside the walls of this parish lies a small adoration chapel. Simple, almost ordinary in its furnishings. Wooden pews polished by years of use, soft carpet beneath the kneelers, candles standing watch like sentinels. At the front, at the very center, rests the monstrance, a radiant golden stand, shaped like the sun, built to hold the consecrated host. The chapel was not built for spectacle. It was built for silence. It was built for presence. Here, parishioners would come to kneel, to breathe, to set down the weight of the day, and to rest their eyes on the Eucharist. Hour after hour, day after day, the same ritual repeated. Footsteps entering quietly, heads bowed, whispers of prayer, and long stretches of wordless stillness. And yet, in this quiet space, something happened that would echo far beyond Glenview. It would begin with a single photograph snapped without flash, without filter, without any thought that it might one day be shared around the world. Then a second, and finally a third. 3 images, captured by 3 different parishioners, that seemed to show what words could not easily explain. Some would call them accidents of light. Others would call them encounters. And so the question hangs in the air. What was captured in that chapel? Was it illusion or invitation? The year was 2013. Technology had already woven itself into every pocket and purse. Smartphones had become the new notebooks of memory, always within reach, always ready to catch the fleeting moments of life. Most of the time, the photos taken in Glenview's chapel were ordinary. A child's first communion portrait, a parish event, flowers near the altar. But one autumn day, a parishioner entered the adoration chapel with no thought of extraordinary photographs, no expectation of visions, no suspicion that history might be about to unfold. Her name was Maureen Kent. Maureen was not a seeker of headlines. She was not the type to chase after the sensational. For more than 2 years, she had made adoration a habit, one quiet hour, week after week, in the company of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. The routine was steady. Kneel, pray, breathe. On this particular visit, Maureen was struck by a simple desire. She wanted a picture of the monstrance. Nothing more.
So I took my iPhone out, no flash. I was not trying to be disrespectful or create any issue. And I snapped a simple picture. And, well, what was produced in the picture, there is a white light and a white image.
At first, Maureen thought her hand had shaken. The picture was too bright, too strange. She blinked, then looked again. The golden monstrance was visible. Yes, but next to it was something else. A white shape, larger than human, hovering near the altar. The form was indistinct, but the light was undeniable. She stared. Her breath caught. This was not what she had seen with her own eyes a moment earlier. The altar had looked ordinary. The light in the chapel was soft, normal. But the photo in her hand seemed to capture a presence that her eyes had not. Maureen leaned closer, her heart racing, trying to find some logical explanation. A reflection, a smudge on the lens. But the more she looked, the more the image seemed to hold steady, unmoving, undeniable. Friends in the chapel saw her reaction and came closer. They too peered at the phone. And then came the first whispered words. "It looks like her. It looks like Mary. The Virgin Mary." Our Lady of Perpetual helped the very title under which the chapel was dedicated. The suggestion was not shouted. It was not announced. It was simply breathed, as if the light itself required reverence. Moran felt no triumph, no pride, only astonishment. She repeated to those around her that she had not edited the image. No photoshopping, no doctoring, just a single snap, and this was the result. Later, when asked, she would say it was a great surprise. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the chapel returned to silence. The monstrance gleamed as it always had. The prayers continued as they always did. Nothing had changed except the photo on Moran's phone. Word of the image spread quietly among parishioners, but Moran herself did not seek authentication. She did not ask for investigation. Neither did the parish. They did not want crowds or controversies. They wanted the chapel to remain what it had always been, a place of quiet prayer. And yet, even without headlines, the image stirred hearts. Some saw in it a reminder that Mary always leads the faithful back to her Son, present in the Eucharist. Others saw in it a test. Would they cling to the photo, or would they return to the silence from which it came? Still others doubted entirely, dismissing it as nothing more than the quirks of a phone camera, a play of light against polished surfaces. But no matter what one believed, the fact remained. The photo existed. And once seen, it was not easily forgotten. The first image was enough to leave Moran unsettled and amazed. Yet it was only the beginning, because soon another parishioner would take another photo. And this time, the light would look even stranger. The chapel did not change after Moran's photograph. But soon, the mystery deepened. It happened not with Moran, but with another parishioner whose name was not broadcast, someone who, like so many, simply came to pray. The chapel was calm, perhaps mid-afternoon, when the sunlight slanted through the glass and painted the pews in soft color. The parishioner knelt, prayed, and eventually, like Moran before, lifted a phone. One tap, one shutter, and again, something unexpected. The photo revealed a burst of light, bright, luminous, and strangely contained. But this time, there was a detail that unsettled those who looked closely. The light did not behave the way light should. It did not spill downward into the pews or cast natural shadows on the carpet. Instead, it seemed to hover, suspended, as if the source of the glow was not the ceiling or the candles, but something in midair. When compared to Moran's earlier image, the similarities were striking. The glow, the size, the positioning near the monstrance. But there was also a difference. This second photo gave the impression of a figure standing not quite on the ground, but floating just above it. Some parishioners who looked at the picture whispered that it seemed like a woman tall, luminous, robed in light. Others could only see brightness, nothing more. And then came the same whispered name as before. Mary, Our Lady of Perpetual Help. This time, the link felt even more natural. The chapel itself was dedicated to her. Her icon watched over the parish, and now the light in the photo seemed to echo her presence, as if she had come to stand near her Son, adored in the Eucharist. But was it her? The Church, careful as always, made no statement. No investigation was opened, and perhaps that was exactly what preserved the photos from becoming spectacle. Instead, they remained quiet mysteries, known to those who prayed in Glenview, and slowly, through word of mouth and digital sharing, known to others beyond. What made the second photo especially thought-provoking was not just the shape of the light, but the way it interacted with the monstrance. In the image, the monstrance itself seemed almost to burn with the same brilliance, as though its rays of gold and the strange glow were one and the same source. This raised an even deeper question. Was the light meant to draw attention to Mary? Or was Mary, if indeed it was her, only pointing again to Christ in the Eucharist? The parish priest, when asked informally, did not stir debate. He simply reminded people, whether there was a photo or not, Jesus is here. That's the miracle. Still, those who saw the image could not forget it. Imagine sitting in that chapel, looking down the row of pews, seeing nothing unusual with your own eyes, and then later, on a small phone screen, noticing what looks like a presence floating above the floor, where moments before you had only seen empty space. It is one thing to hear stories of apparitions told across oceans and centuries: Fatima, Lourdes, Guadeloupe. It is another to see a photo taken in a quiet American suburb by an ordinary parishioner, showing something that looks very much like the same mother who has appeared throughout history. The second photo left the parish in a quiet tension. Some whispered, some doubted, some prayed longer. But even these two images, mysterious as they were, did not prepare the parish for what came next. Because in February 2014, a third parishioner, one whose life had been marked by struggle and suffering, entered the church, not the chapel this time, but the main sanctuary, and took a series of photos near the crucifix. What she captured would be different. Not a glow, not a Marian figure, but something else entirely, something she would later say was her guardian angel. The first two photographs had already unsettled and amazed those who heard about them. A glow beside the monstrance, a light that seemed to hover just above the ground. For some, these images strengthened faith. For others, they stirred only questions. But no one expected that a third photo would appear. And unlike the first two, this one was tied to a deeply personal story. Her name was Laurie. Laurie was not a stranger to suffering. Her life, like so many, had carried storms that could not be seen from the outside. Illness had struck her, and not in small ways. She had fought against a rare and difficult cancer, enduring treatments that drained her body and tested her spirit. She had known pain that kept her awake at night, fear that wrapped around her heart like a cold hand, and exhaustion that made even daily tasks feel impossible. And yet, through all of it, Laurie held to faith. For her, the chapel and the parish were not just buildings. They were lifelines. When the world pressed down, she came here. When her strength failed, she knelt here. And in those moments of stillness before the Eucharist, she found the courage to keep walking, one day at a time. Like many Catholics, Laurie believed in guardian angels, that unseen companions walk beside each person, guiding, protecting, whispering encouragement. To some, it is just a comforting thought. To Laurie, it was a lifeline. She often prayed to her angel for help. Sometimes she even spoke aloud, as if to a trusted friend. On the morning of February 10th, 2014, Laurie entered the church once again. It was just before midday, 10:44 am, though she would not remember the exact time until her phone marked it in the photo's details. She carried her usual burdens, both visible and invisible, and a heart heavy with questions about her future. She prayed to her guardian angel with simple words, "Please, stand beside Jesus. Let me know you are here." After her prayer, she lifted her phone and took a rapid series of pictures of the crucifix that hung above the main altar. 5 photos, one after another. The first 4 showed nothing unusual. The crucifix, the doors to the adoration chapel in the background, the quiet stillness of the sanctuary. But the 5th was different. When she looked at it later, Laurie's breath caught in her throat. Near the crucifix, bathed in light, was a form. Bright, distinct, yet not shaped like the earlier photos of Glenview. This was not a vague glow, not simply light floating in the air. To Laurie, it looked like a figure standing with Jesus. And in that moment, She knew what she believed she had been shown. Her guardian angel. Laurie's conviction was not rooted in theology textbooks or public debate. It was personal, born from her own prayer whispered just moments before the photo was taken. To her, this was no coincidence. She had asked for her angel to show itself beside Christ. And in one frame out of 5, there it was. She insisted the photo was untouched. No editing, no filters, just her phone, an LG Android device, clicking in succession. Out of the 5 shots, only one carried the mysterious image. Those who saw the photograph reacted in different ways. Some believed immediately, pointing to Laurie's faith and her long road of suffering as the very reason God would grant such a gift. Others were cautious, suggesting it was perhaps a trick of light, a reflection, or an imperfection in the lens. But for Laurie, it did not matter. This was not a picture for debate. It was an answer to a prayer. She later described it as a gift of comfort, a reminder that even in her darkest battles, she was not abandoned. And yet, the photo raised deeper questions. Why do some prayers receive such vivid responses, while others seem to meet only silence? Why would a sign appear in Glenview, Illinois, a quiet parish, far from the great shrines of Europe and the historic sites of Christendom? Why here and why then? Perhaps the answer lies not in spectacle, but in intimacy. The photos were never trumpeted by the parish, never certified, never marketed. They remained personal, almost private moments of light caught in the silence of prayer. For Moran, the photo had been a great surprise. For the second parishioner, it was a strange glow above the floor. For Laurie, it was a companion beside the crucifix. 3 people, 3 photos, 3 moments of mystery. When word of Laurie's image spread among fellow parishioners, the reaction was the same as with the first 2. Quiet wonder, mixed with doubt, but always wrapped in reverence. The chapel did not turn into a place of spectacle. No crowds descended. The parish did not seek validation from diocesan officials. And perhaps that was the point. The photographs, whether miraculous or natural, never shifted the focus away from what had always been central, the Eucharist itself. Christ present in the host, adored in silence, radiating grace into hearts that came to sit with him. If the photos were signs, they pointed back to him. If they were illusions, they still served as reminders to return to him. In the end, the parishioners who prayed at Our Lady of Perpetual helped returned to their pews, their rosaries, their quiet hours. The chapel remained what it had always been, a place where heaven and earth meet in stillness. And so the story stands. 1 parish, 3 parishioners, 3 photos, none officially authenticated, none proclaimed as apparitions, and yet none forgotten. What really happened in Glenview? Some will say light played a trick on the camera's lens. Some will insist heaven touched earth in that chapel. Some will refuse to answer at all, preferring to leave the mystery intact. But perhaps the greater question is not about what appeared in the photos. Perhaps it is about what still appears in every Eucharist, every day, in every chapel and altar across the world. The Lord himself, present, waiting, hidden in the host. And perhaps, every so often, heaven allows a glimpse of that truth in ways that catch us off guard aglow. A figure, a reminder that we are not alone. For Moran, for the second parishioner, and for Laurie, the photos remain. For the rest of us, the invitation remains. When all 3 photos are placed side by side, something remarkable happens. The first, with its sudden white figure beside the monstrance, feels like a quiet shock, unexpected, unexplainable. The second, with its hovering light, carries a sense of mystery, as if the chapel itself were suspended between earth and heaven. And the third, taken by Laurie in the main church, feels deeply personal, an answer to prayer, a sign of companionship in suffering. Together, the three do not form a proof. They form a question. What is it that people truly seek when they enter a chapel and kneel before the Eucharist? Is it evidence, a vision, a photograph to show others? Or is it something far simpler, something Mary herself knew when she knelt before her Son in Bethlehem, in Nazareth, and at Calvary? The answer is adoration. To adore is to let the gaze rest, to be present without demand, to stand in silence before the mystery of God. And yet, the photos remind us that sometimes, in ways hidden and ordinary, God allows a glimpse, a reminder, a flash of light that lingers longer than expected. The Church, in her wisdom, makes no official claim about Glenview, and perhaps that is best. Faith does not rest on photographs. It rests on the quiet certainty of Christ's presence in the Eucharist. But this does not mean the photos are meaningless. To those who saw them, they became personal invitations, gentle nudges to return, to kneel again, to trust again. For Maureen, the photo was a surprise that deepened her reverence. For the unnamed second parishioner, it was a puzzle that made the monstrance burn brighter in the imagination. For Laurie, it was a comfort that strengthened her courage in the middle of suffering. And for those who hear the story today, the invitation is the same. Come and see. The world often craves spectacle, headlines, proof, certainty. But the mystery of faith rarely comes wrapped in spectacle. It comes in silence, in stillness, in the steady rhythm of prayer. The parish of Our Lady of Perpetual help remains what it has always been, a quiet place north of Chicago, where people come to sit in front of the host. The pews are still there. The monstrance still gleams. The silence still speaks. And somewhere, in the memory of three parishioners, three photos remain gentle reminders that heaven does not always shout. Sometimes it only shines for an instant, waiting for us to notice. So the story of Glenview does not end with explanation. It ends with invitation. The chapel doors are still open. The light is still waiting. And perhaps so is she. In the end, it was never about the photographs. It was about what they pointed to. Christ, hidden yet present, waiting in the Eucharist. Whether through light, through mystery, or through silence, the same message remains: come, stay with me for 1 hour.